Now, we are back studying about investigating creation. And if you remember, the very, very first week that we were here, we had a question. And our question was, how did the world begin? And we gave two answers. Yes?
Evolution and creation.
All right, good. Evolution and creation. Who can give me just a really quick idea of what evolution is?
An explosion, tiny particle, billions of years.
That's awesome. Yes, you can see our explosion up there. We said sometime there was just some kind of an explosion. There was a little tiny cell that came out of that explosion. And over many thousands and millions of years, that little cell became a bigger cell. And then it began to evolve and change into plants and animals and even human beings. And we've talked about some of the other pictures that are already up here. We said that, yes, they would tell us that we as human beings used to be some kind of an ape. And gradually, the ape changed into human beings. And we also talked about this animal up here used to look like the bottom one and eventually became our modern day horse. And so those were just a few examples of things that they would tell us about evolution. Then we also talked about creation. Who can tell me just a little bit about creation? Anybody? Mm-hmm.
God created land, sky,
Yeah.
everything.
And how many days did it take him? 6 days, and he rested on the seventh. Whereas when we talk about evolution, it takes billions of years to happen. But when we talk about creation, it was only 6 days, wasn't it? And we're only on day 3 today, you're right. All right, then we said, what filled the earth a long, long time ago, before God started creating? What was everywhere? Do you know?
Darkness.
You're right, darkness. So here we have our black screen. Now, even though we said the world was filled with darkness, there was nothing else there. There was one person or being that was there. Who was that? God was there, wasn't he? Good. All right, then, we've been talking about this where we find the record about creation is in the Bible. What book in the Bible do we find that in? Yes. Genesis, that's right, and especially in chapter 1, and we've been reading some of the verses there, haven't we? All right, then, who can tell me what did God create on the very first day? Let's find somebody. Do you know? Yeah? Okay, God created the light, and then he divided that light into day and night, sort of like what we have here up on the screen. All right, how did God make that light? How did he say that he did that? Uh-huh.
He just said, let there be light.
Yeah, he just spoke, didn't he? Now that day, when we were here and we talked about that, we did some experiments and we made a light shine. But did we just speak and our lights shined? Yeah, no, we had wires, we had lemons, we had Coke, we had all kinds of things, didn't we? But God just spoke, and he was able to make the light. And we said, too, when God made that light, then he separated the light into the day and night that we have up there. All right, then on this second day, what was on and all around the earth? Yes. Water was, yes. And then what did God do on the second day? What did he make on the second day? Do you know? Yeah, the water was already there, and he divided the water, didn't he? So here we have the water, and then he made the sky, or we called it sometimes the atmosphere. All right, good. Now, last week, if you were here, we talked about 3 reasons why the sky or the atmosphere is really important. Can anybody at least think of one reason? Uh-huh.
Because if the sky and atmosphere wasn't important, God would have made it and we wouldn't be able to breathe.
Okay, yeah, if he didn't make it, it probably wouldn't have been important, right? But we do need it to breathe, and that was one of the things. We had some volunteers that came up last week, and they tried to hold their breath. And they only held their breath for what, a little over a minute, some of them, some not quite a minute. That's not a very long time. He said, we need air. Go. All right, so that was one reason we needed air. Did you have another one, or did he take yours?
No. The atmosphere acts like a shield.
Okay, yeah, we
from
said
the
it's
sun's rays.
good. It's like a blanket, it's like a shield, so all the rays of the sun don't come directly to the earth. And then those that do come, it kind of helps hold some of those in, so it warms the earth. Good. Do you remember the last one?
No, but and trees also help us breathe.
Yes.
They need carbon dioxide and we need oxygen, so they take carbon dioxide.
You are absolutely right. I think you're a scientist, aren't you? All right, if you were to look at this picture and look at the sky in this picture, does that bring any ideas to your mind about something that we talked about last week? Yes? Well, hypothesis is a word we've been talking about, but not up in the sky in this picture. What do you see in the sky in this picture? Clouds. Does that help you think about anything that we might have talked about last week? Yeah? Can you remember? Otherwise, I see somebody who thinks she remembers. No? Okay.
Heaven?
Oh, no. Uh-huh.
The rain, the snow,
Yes, good job. So we get clouds, we get our rain, we get our snow, the wind. All those things come from our atmosphere as well. Now, God knew exactly what all living things were going to need, didn't he? He knew that they were going to need a light. He knew they were going to need a rest time and an active time. He knew that they were going to need air to breathe. And so he made all those things that we've talked about so far. And these things didn't happen by accident, did they? They were part of God's plan. And that's what we've been talking about every week. That creation is not just something that just might have happened. No, it was a plan that God had. And so today we're going to go on and we're going to find out what God does on the third day. So I have some pictures up here. And if you were to look at all those pictures, there's something that all those pictures have in common. If you were to look at those, do you have any idea what all those things might have in common? Yeah?
The mountains are the ground, and all the watermelon, the sunflowers, and the trees
All come from the ground? Well, that's a good observation. I like that. That's a good thought. Yes?
They all come from Earth.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what Jet was saying. Yeah? Okay.
They all came from God.
Well, that is a really good idea, and I'm going to go with that idea. Not only did they all come from God, but they all came from God on the third day. So these are all things that we're going to talk about today. Now, you know, we've been reading in Genesis chapter 1, and so far, this is what our earth has looked like, right? We said it didn't really have shape like we know it today. It's covered with water, and we've talked so far that God has made that sky. But that's really it, right? And now we come to the third day. And the Bible tells us that again, God just spoke. And he gathered all of these waters together, and then he made some dry land appear. So here's our dry land, and here's our water. And this is the verse where we find in the Bible where it tells us what God did. So let's read that together. Ready? Genesis 1, verse 10a. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. So after he made the dry land, what did he call that dry land? Earth. And he gathered the waters together. What did he call those waters? Seas. Very good. Now, the earth is now trying to take a shape like we might sort of recognize. And so we said that on this third day, God made land. So let's think about that land for a few minutes. Because not all the land looks alike, what kind of land do you see up here? Who can tell me? Yeah, tell me one picture that you see. What kind of land do you see? Okay, so you see mountains. Good. What else? Kaylee, you haven't answered anything yet. What does you see up there? Anything? Any of our people? Okay, so sand, and we find sand at the beach, right? All right, how about, is it Mishaya? What do you see, Mishaya?
Like a desert.
Okay, yeah, there's a desert up there. Okay, yes. Tyson? Rocks, yeah, so it looks like some kind of like some cliffs and rocks in there. Kaylee, do you have one?
The third day.
Well, they did all come from the third day, but we're trying to talk about different land formations. Can you think of anything you see up there? Okay, yeah, there is some dirt right up there. You're right. Because sometimes it's like sand, and sometimes it's just dirt like we might see out here. All right, Jet, your last one.
The beach.
Okay, somebody said the beach. So we've got rocks, we've got desert, we've got dirt, or even maybe in science class you've learned if something's really flat, we call it a plain. All right, so that could be what that is over there. This one over here, no one really got this one, but do you see how it has really high sides and then it kind of goes down?
Valley.
Very good job. A valley. And then we've got our beach, and then we've got our mountains. And these might be some of the different land formations that God made. So when we think that God made the land, don't just think, oh, he just made this flat land. No, he could have done a variety of things of different kinds of land because God is very creative, and every part of the land that he made was very beautiful. How many of you are glad that God made land? Anybody here? Yes, I am too. Because what would happen if we didn't have land?
We would just be falling our whole life.
Well, we'd be swimming our entire life. Because before there was only water. And I don't know about you, but I am not a good swimmer. So I would probably die. Exactly. So now we've got land that we can actually go on. But God wasn't done. Because our verse said that God gathered the waters and then he made this land. But he gathered all the waters together in just the right places. And if you have traveled around or you've studied much, you've seen some things on TV or maybe read in books, you know there's lots of different kinds of water. So who can help me with some pictures that we have up here of water? All right, Tyson, yes. You have to talk really loud. Okay, this one you said there's ice and snow. Yeah, that could be water. All right, how about you?
Ocean.
Okay, there's oceans. Good. Yeah. There's what? Yes, and there's waterfalls. Good. Okay, salt water, because that would be in the oceans. Good. All right, Jet?
Someone's already said this about this specifically, the Niagara Falls.
Okay, so waterfalls or Niagara Falls. Good. How did you know that's Niagara Falls?
I didn't.
Well, that was a good guess, because that's exactly what it was. All right, what do you see? All right, some lakes. All right, so let's just talk about some of these waters right now. You can put your hands down. Over here, let's see if I can get our little pointer thing. Over this one. This is the map of our world, right? And so that's showing us our oceans. And I think Gunnar told us the oceans are full of what kind of water? Salt water. How many of you have been to the ocean and tasted that salt water? Oh, it's not very tasty, is it? No, no. But we have the oceans, and then we have waterfalls over here, and then these ones here could be any kind of lakes or rivers or streams. Now, does anybody know what percentage of the whole earth is made up of water? Like how much water is there all over? I'm thinking of a percentage, not necessarily of gallons or whatever. Connor?
73.
That's something exactly like that. The place I saw said it over 70%, but I think it was 71, 72, something like that. So that's really good. That's a lot of water, isn't it? God knew that everything was going to need water and that water was important. Now, when God finished making this land and the water, he looked around at everything that he had made. He looked at the blue skies. Maybe this one isn't blue in this picture, but he looked at the skies. He looked at the water. He looked at the land. And what does our verse verse say? He saw that it was what?
Good.
Yes, he looked at everything that he did and he said, wow, this is really good. He was very pleased with what he saw. But do you think he was finished? He is not even finished on day 3. He has more to do on day 3. Day 3, he's been really busy, hasn't he? He made land, and then he's divided all these different waters, and now we're going to learn about something else. God decided to fill that land and maybe some of the water with plants. And sorry, this didn't come very well into the program. I had this neat little design, but somehow it didn't work right in the transferring over. But hopefully you can see at least some of the things that are on here. What kind of plants do we see? Flowers, yeah. And how about you?
Grass.
Grass, good. Connor?
Vegetables.
Vegetables, good, yes. Some other vegetables, yes, good. Anything else?
Bushes.
Bushes, yeah. Jeff?
I see a tree.
A tree, yes. Very good job. All right, so now, I only could put a few pictures up on the screen today, but you know, even if you look at the flowers that we have up there, there's a lot of flowers, aren't there? There's all different colors of flowers. I see purple and pink and yellow, orange and white, all kinds of them. And not only are they different colors, but they all look a little different, don't they? They're not all the same. We can look at the different vegetables over there. The vegetables don't even really look that much alike, do they? And then the trees. Now, though we only have one tree sort of in this picture, we know that there's a ton more trees out there. God made all kinds of things, and many of them are very beautiful to look at. And I totally forgot, but I wanted to include this other picture. Have any of you studied the pitcher plant in science before? It's really cool. You should look it up this week. It is a kind of plant that kind of looks like a pitcher. You know, not like a pitcher that you put on the wall, but something that you would pour water out of. So it's kind of like got this big hole. And insects get really excited to go down inside this little hole. And then they get stuck in some water down there. And that's how the plant gets the insects. And I thought that was really unusual because not all flowers do that. But so God made some unusual ones. He made some beautiful ones. But some of them, like we talked about with the vegetables, we can eat some of those. So there's just a variety of things that God made. But just like everything else we've talked about, the land, the water, the light, how did God make those things? Did he have a laboratory and he just went in there and he put all kinds of chemicals together? He spoke, that's right. He spoke and those things just came. They were already grown. They didn't come as a little seed. They were already grown just like that. And not only did God make all of these things, but he also did something else very special. Do you see this little diagram up here? Every one of those plants that God made, God also made a seed inside those plants so that they could make more seeds or more plants just like them. Now, I'm thinking this is probably a bean seed. And if we start over here, you can see there's our seed. And then we see that little tiny little root that's coming out of there. And then getting a little bigger. Now it's really big. And then it's starting to get its new little plant until over here, the plant is getting a lot bigger, isn't it? Now, how many of you have ever had a garden before? Maybe helped your mom or dad with a garden or something. All right, good. Put your hands down. What kind of things have you planted in your garden? Somebody raise yours and then let me see. All right, Connor, what about you?
Vegetables.
Well, what kind of vegetables?
Corn.
Okay, so let's take corn for instance. If you plant that corn seed, when it's time for the plant to start growing, what do you expect to see in that place?
Like
Are you going to find a watermelon there? No. If you put a corn seed, what is going to come up? Corn is going to come up. Yeah. If we have a bean seed over here, we're going to grow a bean, aren't we? If we plant a watermelon seed, then by all means we'll get a watermelon seed, won't we? So God made these seeds, and he made made them to grow the very same thing. They're not going to change and be something else. If you plant a corn seed, it's always going to come up into a corn seed. That's the way God did it at the beginning, and ever since then, it has been doing the same thing. Well, as God looked at all the things that he had finished on the third day, he looked at all the beautiful things that he had grown, or he had made. The trees, the grass, the bushes, the flowers, the land. And again, what does God say? He saw it and it was
Good.
It was good. Yes, he was happy with the way the earth looked. Little by little, God was making a beautiful place that was going to be ready for man to live in. These things didn't happen by accident. This was all part of God's, what have we been talking about?
Plan.
God's plan, that's right. And so this was what God did on day 3. He did the dirt, he did the land, he did all of the plants, every kind of plant that you can think of. And next week, we're going to come back and we're going to find out what God did on day number 4. All right, we have just like maybe a couple of minutes, and I have, I think, 7 questions. So let's see how well you listen tonight, okay? All right, what did God make when he gathered the waters together? He said he gathered the waters together, and yes, what did he make?
Land.
Land, good. What did he call that land? I'm going to call on somebody who I haven't heard talk yet, like Easton. What did he call that dry land? Earth, good job, good job. What did he call the water? Seas, good. What else did God make on the third day? We talked about land already, so what else did he make? Okay? Can't remember, you might just look up there on the screen. Maybe. Plants, okay, good. Connor, tell us some plants that he would have made.
Flowers, bushes, trees.
Okay, yeah, you got them. All right, how did God make everything that we have talked about today? Bailey. Good. All right, he spoke, and just like that, they happened. All right, now listen. Did all these things happen just by accident, just by chance, or were they part of God's plan? I want everybody to say it out loud.
Part of God's plan.
Good, 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 good. All right, last question. When God was finished on day 3, Nathan, what did God say? It was good. That's right, because he was very pleased with everything he had done. You guys did an awesome job listening, and you did a good job answering your questions tonight, too. So we should be able to put 4 people at each station, all right? Today, we have talked a lot about plants, haven't we? So our experiments today, they're not going to be so much experiments as they are you are going to be doing some observing. And you're going to have some different things that you're going to observe, and you're going to write down some observations, because that's what scientists do. They have to observe and they have to write down all their things. All right, welcome to our lesson number 4, day number 3, lab experiment time. So in our lesson today, we learned about what God made on the 3rd day of creation. We said he made the dry land, and then he also made all kinds of plants, trees, flowers, all kinds of things like that. And so today for our lab time, we are going to be working with seeds, and we're going to be looking at them and observing them, and then we're also going to be dissecting them a little bit. So let me just go over some of the different the supplies that we're going to need, and then we'll start right in on our project. So the first thing that we have is we have just 1 bean, all right? This is a dry bean, okay? And this is a lima bean. We just bought a bag of them at the store, but you could do any kind of dried bean, really will work. And then we also have this bowl that we've been soaking some of those very same beans in the water here. And we've had these in here for maybe, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And so that's what these are right here, okay? And then if you have a magnifying glass, you can use that to help you observe. If you don't, it's okay. You need a ruler in order to measure your beans or your seeds. You need a pen or a pencil, and then we're going to have a little worksheet that we're going to be filling out as we do our observations today. And we'll put a link or show you the picture of that and help you to be able to print that out if you need that. All right, so the first thing that we have here in our worksheet, number 1 says we're going to observe. And that's one of the things that scientists do. They have to observe and use their observation in order to learn things. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. So the very first thing that we want to do is on that box right underneath observe. I want you to take your pen and you're going to draw a line and divide it so it's in half so that you'll have 2 different parts. So go ahead and do that. And then over on the left side, you're going to write the word dry. And over on the right side, you'll write the word wet. It doesn't really matter which side you make it. Just make one side and put the letters dry and the other side wet, okay? So our paper should look something like this. Can you see that? Just have dry on one side and wet on the other side. Because we're going to look at the dry bean and we are going to write down some information, what we see, what we're observing with the dried one, and then we're also going to look at one of the wet ones. So here is your dry bean. You can look in the microscope, or not the microscope, but the magnifying glass if you like. And we want to learn some things by observing. So take a look at it, look really carefully, and then we want to write down some things about our dry bean. For instance, is it hard or is it soft? Is it dry? Is it wet? What color is it? Let's see, what might be some other things that we would want to look at. Oh, is it smooth or is it rough? So let's write some of those things down about our dry bean. So far we have it's hard, it's kind of like an off-white color, we might call it. It's smooth. All right, good. Now, let's take a look at one of these wet ones. All right. Now, here's a wet one. So now you can do the same thing. You can take a look at it underneath a magnifying glass. And then we want to think about those same things. Is it hard? Is it a little softer, maybe? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Has it changed at all? So what kind of things might we write about our wet seed here? A little bit softer, or is it still just as hard?
It's a little bit soft.
A little bit soft. Still smooth, or do you think this is a bit rough now? It's a little bit rough, so it's not as smooth as it was. All right, so you can write down whatever kind of things that you're observing from the beans that you have. Now, if you don't have the same kind of beans that we are doing our experiment with today, that's okay. It doesn't really matter. You're just trying to use your observation and trying to get those things down. All right, let's go down to number 2 then. Number 2 says measure. And again, you want to put a line down the middle of your box, and we're going to put the same dry and wet because we want to measure a dry bean, and then we're also going to measure the wet bean and see if there's any difference. All right, so do you have your ruler here? All right, make sure that wherever your ruler is, you start it on 0. I think it's close to 7/8 of an inch. So let's put that down on our dry side. All right, and now let's measure the wet one. What do you think? Do you think it's a little bigger? It looks bigger, doesn't it? All right. Yeah, so if we have it really on the 0, oh, well, look at that. This one is over an inch. It's like maybe an inch, like 1 1/8 inches. So it's definitely bigger. If we put them side by side, you can see they definitely have gotten bigger. So we're just gonna write that on our worksheet then, aren't we? All right, now the next thing that we're gonna do. Step number 3 is predict. And so you want to predict. If we were to take this bean and we were to open it up, what do you think you would see inside this? So just take a minute and you can put whatever you want. What do you think you're gonna find inside this bean or inside this seed? Go ahead and write something down. Do you think it's gonna be empty inside? Do you think something will be inside? What do you think that something will look like? What color will it be? Will it be hard? Will it be soft? What kind of things are you gonna find in there? So we have on our paper, the root will be inside and it should be a light green. All right, so that's her prediction of what we're gonna find inside. All right, we're gonna move on to step number 4. Step number 4 then is check. We made a prediction of what we're gonna find inside. So now we get to open up our seed and we need to see what's really inside. And then you're going to write that down in step number 4 on the check box. Whatever you find inside, just write down a little description of what you find in there. All right, do you wanna you can take this one, or if you like some of these other ones. Now, sometimes after they've soaked for a little while in the water, they're real easy to come and break open. You can try to put your thumbnail inside, or you can, did it break open right in half? Sort of. All right. All right, so let's do another one. This one looks like it's already halfway. And let's open it again. And this is what the inside looks like. Can you see that? So it's like really in half. So what should we write down on our paper? Did we see anything green in here? No, we didn't, did we? But what could we write down?
It was like a tinted white.
Okay, it was still kind of white. Are they hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really see any roots, do we? We see this little part here, and then we have 2 halves that sort of look alike, don't we? And then we have this part here that looks kind of like the skin, yeah, or the covering. So that's really what we're finding right there. Okay, so what can we write down in our box? Because this is what we found. And now you go ahead and write down what you see. Maybe you have the same thing we have. If you have the same bean, it might look exactly like this, where we have our 2 little halves, and we've got this little part right here, and then we've got that skin part as well. All right, so step number 4 is you're checking. You're actually writing down what you are seeing, because that's what scientists do. They have an idea of what they're gonna find or what they hope to be able to maybe do with a certain experiment, and then they have to record what actually happened, and so that's what we're doing right here. All right, then we're gonna move on to step number 5. Step number 5 then is compare. So we wanna think about, what did we predict? What did we think we would find? What did we actually find? Were there any things that were the same? Like we thought this is what we would find and that's what we actually did? Or is there something different? We thought we'd see this and we didn't see that at all, but we saw something different. So on ours here, we thought a root was gonna be inside, which we don't really have a root here, do we? So yeah, so maybe we should say there were no roots and there was nothing green. So those would be differences on what we wrote down. You can write down whatever if yours aren't gonna necessarily be the same answers as ours, because you might have something different down as your prediction. There's not necessarily a right and wrong here. It's all in what you're seeing and what you thought was gonna be inside the seed. All right, now that kind of finishes this side of our paper. Now we're gonna go to the other side of the paper. And this actually shows kind of like our lima bean here, and it shows the different parts of it. And so we're gonna talk about those 3 parts that we found in here. Now, one of the things that we said we found was the skin, all right? Or we call it the coat or the cover. And that's really what this is. They call it a seed coat, and all seeds have it. So on our little diagram that we have here, that one would be this one down here, and you would want to put in your box seed coat. All right, you can just spell that out on that one right there. Now, you might say, well, why would the seeds have a coat? Well, that coat is there to help protect the seed. You see, before we put it into the water, that seed coat is very hard, and it helps you not to be able to get into that seed and destroy it. But it also helps to keep moisture inside the seed as well. So it's very important. All right, then we're going to talk about this little part here, okay? And that's this little tiny, I don't even know if you can see that little thing that I'm holding in my hand. It looks like just a little tiny, I don't even know what you would call it. But anyway, it's this little tiny yellow or little white thing, okay? And that, does anybody know what that is? Do you know what that is?
The seed.
All right, this is actually the plant, the tiny plant that's inside the seed. This is what is going to grow to be whatever plant that you have a seed from. We have a lima bean. So this would be a new lima bean that's going to grow from this little thing here, okay? And if you have a different kind of a seed, then it would be whatever seed you have, that's it. So up in this here, this is called the embryo. Now the embryo is a pretty big word, isn't it? Let me help you spell it. It's E-M-B-R-Y-O, and that's called the embryo. And all that is the tiny plant that's inside the seed. All right, then we have this other, the last part of our seed, and that's that big section over here. And we'll write the answer over here. And this is what it looks like in our seed. And we actually had two parts, two halves that looked just like this. And these are called the cotyledon, something like that. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but the cotyledon. And let me spell that for you. It's C-O-T-Y-L-E-D-O-N. Does anybody know what this is? What is the cotyledon? Do you know what that is?
The food for the seed.
Yeah, that's the food for that little seed that we were holding up, that little plant that we were talking about. Before it begins to open and begins to germinate or sprout, then this is what that little plant inside is going to be eating on. All right, so this is like its food, and it has two little parts just like that. All right, so hopefully now you have all of your worksheet filled out. We had 5 different steps over here, and then you've got your 3 different parts of your seed that you found when you dissected your seed. All right, I hope you had fun with that today. And we need to remember that God made these seeds, and He made these seeds so that they would keep making new plants just the same kind that you have in the seed. So if I have a lima bean, I'm not going to get a flower later on. I'm going to get another lima bean. Every seed is going to bring forth whatever it is a seed